Welcome to Quality Time with MoreSteam. I am your host, Dan Swartout. Today's guest is Darren Walsh. Darren is a lean leadership coach and author with over 30 years of experience driving transformations across industries like medical devices, aerospace, and video games. Believe me, we talk about that. Darren wrote the book, Making Lean and Continuous Improvement Work, a leader's guide to increasing consistency and getting significantly more done in less time. Stick around for a great conversation with one of the most influential people in lean. I hope you enjoy my conversation with Darren Walsh. Today, we are lucky enough to be joined by Darren Walsh. Darren is director and leadership coach at Making Lean Work Limited, which is a leading management consultancy specializing in helping business leaders unlock the transformative power of continuous improvement. And Darren is also the author of the book, Making Lean and Continuous Improvement Work, a leader's guide to increasing consistency and getting significantly more done in less time. Darren, welcome to the show.
Well, thank you, Dan. Thanks for having us.
We are so glad to have you on the show today. And of course, I will put information related to your book in the show notes. That book is available on Amazon, all sorts of booksellers. I'll put that information in the show notes as well as information on how to contact you. So excited to have you on the show today. You have such an interesting career and practice currently. Before we dive into all of that, why don't you tell us a little bit more about your background?
Yeah, so I started in the continuous improvement space, probably 30 something years ago. I was actually a production engineer, and my quality manager and production engineer manager, they made a big impact on me at the time. And they handed me some literature on the quality gurus. If you remember Duran, Deming, and in there was this fantastic looking guy, Shingo.
Yes.
And I started reading the works of Shigeo Shingo. So that would have been 30 something years ago. And from there, I niched from production engineering into industrial engineering. And at 20, I had a Japanese mentor who spoke hardly any English, just maybe a couple of words. And most of the time he would draw and just use hand signals. And I was fortunate to work with him one-to-one for perhaps, I think it was about 9 months. So we were applying continuous improvement techniques, problem-solving techniques. I moved on from there. That was with Sony Iowa. Moved on from there to Sega. Sega came in Europe. It was actually called JPM in the beginning, and Sega acquired them within, I think it was about a year and a half of me joining them. Yeah, and I would practice continuous improvement back then, and I would improve some of the business units and set up the products and set up the management routines and systems. And then I'd go back and I'd be wondering, well, why is this degrading? Why is this starting to fall apart? Why aren't the management routines? Why aren't the team meetings not as good? Why is the housekeeping not as good? And I used to scratch my head about what else do I need to do to sustain this? And that's when I ended up joining the master's course at Cardiff Business School. It was with the Lean Enterprise Research Centre. And that gave me sort of the umbrella framework of Lean and getting into the thinking behind a lot of the improvement tools. I went on from Sega, went to Boston Scientific, medical device products, worked in an organization in Ireland, 3,500 people on one site. So made improvement there. And wherever I went, it was, that stuff won't work here, but it does. Yeah, it works everywhere. From there, I went and joined Parker Hannifin as a division lean business improvement manager. So I think there's 9 sites across Europe. Then after that, aerospace organizations, Zodiac Aerospace, same role, and then oil and gas. And after that was the end of my proper job. And I basically started my own business. Also worked under the framework of the Lean Institute for about 8-9 years. And I've just been basically trying to help businesses who struggle to implement lean and continuous improvement techniques. The struggles are why I've got the gray hair, by the way, as well.
I want to talk a lot about Sega because Sega, as somebody who is in Generation X, Sega
Yeah.
means a lot to me. A lot of great memories with Sega. Before we get into that, though, I want to ask about your book, Making Lean and Continuous Improvement Work. If
Hmm.
somebody listening hasn't picked up your book yet, how do you describe what the book is really about and who you had in mind as an audience for the book when you wrote it?
Well, the book came about because while I was visiting I remember my own struggles from when I had a proper job, but also when I would visit in different businesses, I would see the same types of problems over and over again. So that for the over 10 years now, I've been researching, I've been investigating. Well, why is it after, I don't know, hundreds of years, do people still struggle with problem solving? Why do we still struggle with continuous improvement? And wherever you go, you see this. And I've seen it in automotive, I've seen it in aerospace, medical device, energy. You see it in retail. You can go to the I keep bringing this up because it's one of my pet hates. You can go to your local coffee shop and the dishwasher's broken down or they've run out of tea or they've run out of jam. And wherever you go, these organizations, even the ones with the nice shiny awards that say they are excellent, you can walk around and very quickly you can see that generally most teams are still struggling to solve problems and improve. And when you investigate that a little bit further, it's also linked to the management, the frontline management, not asking and not spending time on the right things and not asking the right questions. So the book really came about because of my passion and my interest and the fact that I don't like this, the status quo of just letting people just carry on and struggle. So I started investigating that. So the book really is for improvement practitioners. It's for people who are passionate, but it's more focused on management because I think that management are key to this. So when I say management, frontline supervision, team leaders, middle managers, senior leaders, because they've all got a part to play in making lean and continuous improvement work. Yeah, so that's where the book is focused. While I was investigating and seeing these common pitfalls, I started identifying the common pitfalls and I started breaking them down and trying to explain why they were there and what people could do about it. But largely, I realized that most of the problem was linked to daily lean management or a foundation for improvement. Either organizations didn't have a foundation for improvement, they were rushing to Kaizen and then wondering why they were not getting the results they should be getting, or they wasn't sustaining it, or basically just not focusing on the right problem at the right time. And the other thing is, if you can't make daily lean management work, then you're not going to make the more advanced tools and techniques work, like strategy planning or Hoshin Kanri and Kaizen, because ultimately you need that daily management to lock in the changes.
Darren, you're hitting all of the key points that we've covered so much over the last year on Quality Time with MoreSteam, Kaizen, daily management, Hoshin Conry. This is fantastic. What is like the number one, after somebody's finished your book, what is the number one practical takeaway that somebody could take from your book and put into practice right away?
That the first thing I would say is to build your visual management based on good PDCA structure. Now you see it
Plan,
on
do,
link.
check, act. For new
Exactly.
listeners, that's plan, do, check, act.
Yeah. Not a little bit of planning and act. Because that's what most people do. They jump to solutions. And you see it on LinkedIn and Facebook, and you see it in every business you go to. And it just really irritates me when I see problem action. Because, how do you know that the teams have found the cause? What action is that particular action connected to? What problem is it connected to? most teams struggle that they don't really understand performance. They've got some average measure, some target, which is unachievable. So most teams struggle that they don't even understand their own performance. Also, I would add there that most teams are either not working on the right problem, or they are struggling to get to the root cause. So the visual management really needs to be right, because with this PDCA structure, otherwise teams will just work on the wrong problem. They will jump to solutions, and management will basically let it happen. They will ask the wrong questions, or they will walk past problems that teams need help for. So we need to build good PDCA structure into the visual management. And I think, you can put lean and continuous improvement aside. If you've got good PDCA structure in your visual management, then teams will understand their own performance, whether they are winning or losing, ahead or behind on the schedule. They will understand what the biggest problems are that are hindering that performance. And then they will be working on the problems, or another part of the organization will be. And it'll be clear if they are struggling, and management then should help to actually get the right help to that team. So that's the first thing I would say.
That's fantastic. Thank you so much for that. We haven't talked as much about PDCA as some of the other topics you mentioned earlier, so I very much appreciate you going into that. And as I mentioned earlier, I definitely want to talk more about Sega. Like I said, I'm in Generation X, the first generation to really grow up with video games. So as I was looking at your background, Sega totally jumped out to me. Darren, I'm curious because game development is inherently creative. You've got artists, designers, programmers, all working in different ways. How do you introduce structure and standards without killing that creative energy? Were there any early experiments where the teams basically said, nope, this isn't going to work?
The key there is saying to designers, look, you are creative people. You don't want to be stuck doing the sort of the mundane changes. So my approach was basically just simplify the routine stuff and provide more time where we can for the creative stuff, but also engaging with the designers to, well, who's the customer? Your first customer is the suppliers and the people who are going to manufacture it. So how do we take the design and improve it so it's easier to build?
All these years later, looking back at Sega, what did that experience teach you about lean in creative or knowledge work environments that maybe you didn't fully appreciate when you were working in classic manufacturing settings? So you've moved from the manufacturing area to this creative knowledge area. What did that teach you about lean, about continuous improvement?
On the software side, even today, it's a case of it doesn't need to be perfect. And this also goes back to my previous mentor as well, the Japanese mentor. 51% is good enough. So if you think something will work, try it, test it. And really, you need to do that in sales, product development, manufacturing, and the other supporting functions. Now, obviously, on the other side of the business, coming back to the gaming side of the business, the Sega Mega Drive, I think you would have called it Genesis at the time.
Right.
Yeah, that would have probably had 60 or 70% market share worldwide. And then they launched a new product, the Sega Saturn. And I think that was the one that flopped. And then they restructured the business and brought out the Sega Master System, which was a good system, but by then it lost its spot. And Sony and Nintendo were then the market leader. So Sega do not make product on the home entertainment side anymore. They only do software. And that really goes down to you can't just focus on manufacturing alone or design alone. You've got to make sure that your primary value stream, your sales, what's the problem that the customer's got, designing the best product with the best features, the supply chain, the operations, and the aftermarket. You've got to focus on those primary value streams, because if your value streams are too long, and that's what happened when Sega launched the new products, the value streams are too long, and Nintendo and Sony, their value streams were much shorter, and they were launching better products with better features and better graphics and faster processors in a much shorter time. So to be a business that lasts the test of time, you've got to be competing on each of those four primary processes. Otherwise, you'll end up like obviously Sega is still a successful business, but they do not make home entertainment products anymore. They only do software. And you can think of Nokia and BlackBerry, and the world is sort of littered with those organizations that were successful for a time and no longer.
Yeah, I remember when everyone based on the Genesis was so looking forward to the Sega Saturn, and the Sega Saturn came out almost at the exact same time as the PlayStation 1 from
Yep.
Sony, and the PlayStation 1 was $100 less expensive. It was easier for third-party programmers to program. So, I mean, the Sega Saturn's time in the marketplace was just so short. And a
Yep.
lot of that goes back to what you were saying just a moment ago.
Yep. And even before that, I think the Mega Drive had an option on there as well that allowed more than one gamer to actually compete, but they didn't build on that at the time.
Fascinating stuff, Darren. I appreciate you taking me down memory
No problem.
lane with an insider's perspective on Sega. I can see myself now back in college, still playing with my buddies. Thanks, Darren. I appreciate that a lot. I want to talk about some of the other work you've done. You've been responsible for multi-site transformations. You go into a company and you've got sites all across the country or all across a continent. When you walk into that kind of complexity for the first time, what do your first 60 or 30 days actually look like? What does that look like for you, Darren, when you walk into that kind of complexity?
That's a good question. My first 30 or 60 days has definitely changed from some of the problems and some of the mistakes that I've made earlier. I used to make sure that I put in lean managers and lean champions to drive improvement. These days, I focus on the management system. I look at the management system from top to bottom and from bottom to top. I look at our people at the front lines. Are they actually working on improvement or are they not trying? Whether they're in the sales, design, supply chain, or manufacturing areas, do they understand that performance? Do they understand the biggest problems impacting them? Are they working on the problems and are they getting help when needed? And look at what the management role is in that. So I look at that, and that's typically your, we call it your SQDC type boards, visual management boards as well. Then I go to the next level. I do something similar, and I go to the senior team at the plant level or at a division level, multi-site level, and I do something similar. And I look for the linkages. I look to make sure, if that's our strategy and we want to be number one in delivery, how does that flow down, and are people actually working on it? And many organizations often talk about silos. They talk about, well, sales is doing this and design is doing this and manufacturing is doing this. And they've got the silos and largely it's because, well, they measure functional metrics. They sit people together in their functions. So the typical QDC boards might work at the front line, but the next level, or perhaps the level from that, you certainly need some measures of flow. You need some value stream management. You need people to cut across the value stream and drive value stream improvement, and you need measures of the customer and of flow. And again, most businesses do not. And therefore, the continuous improvement techniques where they have them are largely tick the box actions. You can get, 5, 10, 20%, savings and sometimes on paper. But if you want the 50%, 80% gains, you've also got to have these measures of the process. You've got to be driving value through the process, not at individual points in the process.
Wow, Darren, this is really in-depth stuff. I'm really excited about this conversation. This is fantastic. And we've talked about some of these multi-site transformations. Let's talk about some of your smaller businesses, because I know you're working with and mentoring smaller businesses.
Mm.
So, if in addition to your work with the multinationals, these smaller businesses, and if a 20-person company came to you and said, "We're drowning, we need help, where on earth do we start with lean? We're a small business. How does this work for us?" How would you answer that question for those smaller businesses?
It's much the same. First of all, you start to look at, well, does the team understand their own performance? What are the problems impacting that performance? Are they working on the problems? Are they getting help? You're doing that for the business. You're making sure that those metrics align with customer and business success. But ultimately, whether you're in a small business or a large people think that large corporates have got lots and lots of time. I've worked in some large organizations with thousands of people, and nobody's got time. It's
Right.
just so busy, and you can't get
Yeah.
a meeting room. And where the teams tell me, or frontline supervision, or lead engineers, or VPs of service say that they've got no time for improvement, I run a little exercise with them. It's like a personal Kaizen. And I get them to do a very simple personal Kaizen. It could take like 20 minutes. And we capture what are they currently spending their time on. We look at, the frequency, how long does that take? Is that value added or not? And we can look to stop some of those tasks or simplify them or delegate them to the right people. Because sometimes you see multiple people go into the same meeting when they don't need to. And then
Yeah,
we
I
look.
think everyone, Darren, I think every listener to this show can relate to what you just said. Why am I
Meeting,
here? Why was I on this invitation?
meeting hell, eh? Yeah. Um, but uh, but as well as it's important to look at what people spend their time on, but it's also important to look at, well, what don't they spend their time doing?
Hmm.
Most frontline managers, middle managers, are not spending time on the right thing. So they haven't got time where they can apply structured people development. They got time for the annual performance review, but they are not mentoring their people on a day-to-day or a weekly, monthly basis. Not saying that's true for everyone, but there's a lot out there. And you also see in different organizations, you see that, some managers or some team leaders are very good and others are not. Well, maybe that's where we need to standardize the management, the work of management. And the last couple of years as well, there's a lot of talk about Gemba walks, and I love Gemba walks. So Gemba walks is basically just go into the real place where the work happens. And you can do that in the design office, you can do that in supply chain office, or on the shop floor. Although it can be a little bit more difficult. I was doing it in retail. It can be more difficult in sort of multi-site operations where you've got co-located teams and that, but you can still do it. These days, the Gemba walks turn into sort of corporate chats or benchmarking visits where people just go for a chat and take pictures. The teams, and they're not practicing. A Gemba walk for me, there's different types, but Gemba walk for me is basically a management team.
Right.
And the role of management should be to understand what is your team's performance. Do they realize that? What's the problems which are impacting them? Are they working on them? And do they need help? And most businesses haven't got that routine in place. And then they can sometimes beat people up for not getting the results. But they've walked past the problem many a time. So for me, I want to help people improve. I don't like to see sort of toxic workplaces either. I like to see environments that are really good cultures, going back to my days at Sega. So I like to see cultures where people grow and learn. And part of that is that, yes, we need the teams, whether in operations or supply chain, we need them trying to improve. That improvement should be part of the work, not something additional to the work. But we also need management to actually play their role in helping teams drive improvement. and maybe look at the problems that they should be fixing also, because there's a lot of problems out there that frontline teams cannot fix themselves. And that's where management comes in. Organizational design, conflicting KPIs, those type of things, process problems.
Right. Darren, I'm fascinated by what you just mentioned about going to the Gemba, because that's something we've talked about a lot on the show. I think it's talked about in the world of lean constantly. And what you're saying is that some people are almost going to the Gemba for show rather than for the true purpose of why you do that?
Yeah.
How do people recognize that and fix that?
Well, you look at benchmarking visits and corporate visits, a lot of it is for show. We also need to recognize, well, when people go with good intentions to find out how people are doing and to go and visit them, sometimes they still go with that hidden agenda of, I want to get something over to the team, or I want to get some additional information off the team. Quite often also you see leaders walk around and they start looking, oh, this place is dirty. We need to clean this up, or maybe we need to do some painting. Maybe we need to move that around. And they start looking for waste, lean waste, tin wood, transport, inventory, motion, weighting, overcorrection, defects. They start looking. That's not their job. Their job is not to look for waste, right? That's the team. The team should be, they should be problem solving first. And then once they've taken variation out of the work, they can look for waste and to start streamlining the process. Management's job is not to look for 5S housekeeping or waste, or to see if people are busy. Management job is to see, are people working on the right things and do they need help? What problems are they having that they can't solve? And that goes back to management. That's the ones that they need to take away. And yet, you go and visit many management teams and say, well, what problem are you working on? And they'll tell you the problems that their team are working on, not anything that they're owning. There's very few management teams who actually get together themselves and say, oh, right, yeah, I'm working on this organizational problem or this process problem.
Wow, that was awesome. As we mentioned a little bit before the start of the show, we like to take video clips from time to time of the show and share them on LinkedIn or YouTube. And I can already see in my mind, I've said this before on the show, I can see in my mind that clip on LinkedIn right now. That was fantastic. No joke, those were some fantastic insights from Darren Walsh. And again, no joke, there will be some fantastic insights in this short break. MoreSteam's enterprise process improvement platform includes the tools, training, and software you need to transform your organization into a problem-solving powerhouse. Join the ranks of Fortune 500 companies that trust MoreSteam for their enterprise process improvement. Visit MoreSteam.com to learn more. Also, I want to take just a moment to thank you for listening to Quality Time with MoreSteam. You can email the show at qualitytime@moresteam.com. And if you're enjoying the show, please leave a rating or review on your favorite podcast service. And now back to my conversation with Darren Walsh. You're the author of Making Lean and Continuous Improvement Work, a leader's guide to increasing consistency and getting significantly more done in less time, which sounds good to everybody, but you're also working on a second book that leans into the struggles with lean. As you look across your recent work, what patterns are you seeing in organizations that genuinely want to improve, but still get stuck? And that you think people aren't being honest enough about yet, those problems?
Yeah. So the current book gets into, as well as breaking down some of the problems and how leaders can navigate them, they also recognize that I need to teach. Some people might not know what daily management is. So I need to explain that. The book, which I'm working on now at the moment, and I'm researching at the moment, is really getting into the major pitfalls that I think we're going down a path where, lean and continuous improvement have been around. Well, lean has been around for, what's this now, 35 years, 36 years, something like that. Maybe a little bit longer. I'm thinking of the book Lean Thinking, but yeah, the machine that changed the world.
Yes.
Yeah, that's where the phrase was coined and the research before that. And I think we're going down a path now that most organizations are choosing the wrong improvement strategy. Now, if they want quick wins, then and that's all they want, then you can choose to Kaizen everything, which is an approach that works for some organizations. But if you want to create a sustainable improvement culture, that doesn't work. So for me, a lot of organizations are choosing the wrong improvement approach, the wrong improvement strategy. Many organizations and universities are teaching the wrong improvement strategy. Look, we've got green belts and yellow belts, and there's millions of people around the world with all of these certificates. So why haven't we got 10,000 brilliant businesses? Yeah, most businesses still struggle with the day-to-day. They've run out of day-to-day issues, and they keep seeing the same problems recur. So the new book is researching, and it's getting into the sort of the real common pitfalls. The tools and improvement tools and techniques are not new, but why aren't people getting the results? Largely because they approach it with the wrong thinking. Sometimes they approach it with this solution mode or this closed mindset, as Carol Dweck will talks about. So I think you've got to use certain improvement tools and techniques with a certain mindset. So the new book then is going to be focused on these main key pitfalls that organizations suffer with. The wrong improvement approach or improvement strategy. The mindset. Organizations have got lots and lots of tools and techniques, but many of them still struggle to get the results. And that's largely because we're applying many of the tools with a closed mindset rather than a lean thinking or discovery mindset. And the other part for me is what management spend their time on and the management routines. If management believe that this is important, that it's important to help the organization, to help their team be successful, then we would be spending time on things. But a lot of managers will turn up and they all know the buzzwords. And I was at a financial services organization, and the leaders would walk around every now and again, and their answer to problems was, "Oh, you need to go and speak to the business excellence team. They'll run a workshop for you." Well, that just tells me that the management are not applying the right thinking or the right routines. Because the daily lean management, if it was effective, then the team would be focusing on the right things. They would be trying to solve the problems, and management below them would be pulling in the help. So yeah, we get into getting into then sort of what managers should be spending their time on, and also the routines. If we want to create a culture, a sustainable culture of continuous improvement, I believe that comes down to having the right system or the right strategy, management spending time on the right things in the right way. Otherwise, the daily lean management doesn't work.
Right. Right. So you haven't used the term yet, but it seems like so much of what you're talking about is having the right standard work. Am I right?
Yeah, I suppose that's a good point. Actually, I've learned something. Yeah, it's just the right standard work for continuous improvement in your business. And that goes back to, and I had a proper job, and I worked in single site, and I was leading continuous improvement or lean across single sites or multi-site. Some of the mistakes I made in the beginning was that I was trying to develop experts, and I would also develop maturity assessments, like world-class manufacturing maturity assessments, and we would be looking for gaps, and then the teams would have to start driving, the actions to the gaps. But quickly I learned that, those two actions in themselves drove teams to work on the wrong things, and it also drove management to delegate responsibility for continuous improvement and business improvement to those subject matter experts. Now, the subject matter experts can be important, but they shouldn't be on day-to-day problem solving, day-to-day Kaizen activity. They can help coach and mentor management, but also they could be working on problems that the teams cannot fix.
Wow. It's so, that's one of the things that seems to be a continuous theme is you give your team at the front line the ability and freedom to make suggestions, to experiment, to try things. And some things will work and some things won't, but you give that experiment because so many of the problems are discovered and solved by the people at the front lines, correct?
Yep. Yep. And we give them a little bit of structure so that they work on the right things. And if they can't solve those problems because maybe they are outside of their scope of control, then that's where the management routines come in and make sure that the right people are joining them in the right way to drive improvement. And also management are looking for what are the organizational issues that are hindering my team. So in a way, it's taking your traditional model of management where, down here people do the work and up here people play golf. And you're and and you're flipping that around. Of course, you need both. Yeah, you need both because you've got strategy planning and deployment, but you need to flip the pyramid as well, so that the people who are at the front line, who are producing the value for the customer, whether it's in the sales, in the design, in the supply chain, or in the manufacturing or service office, you are looking at the people that deliver the value for the customer. What problems are they having? Do they understand them? Are they fixing the ones that they can fix? Using a little bit of structure, and are they getting help to fix the other things? If we took any business, right? If we took any business, imagine what it would look like, or imagine what the world would look like if management routines, Gemba Walks, took on these management routines and made sure that teams, every team in their business was working, and this only takes a few minutes, was working on the right problems. They understood performance, they were working on the right problems, and they were getting help when needed. And that's how we make massive change, breakthrough change.
Darren, when can we expect the new book? And will you come back and join us on the show again when it comes out so we can discuss it?
Oh, definitely come back. It's a little while off. I'm still in there. I've got these key areas, I believe, that are key to creating a continuous improvement culture, lasting continuous improvement culture. But what I'm going to do next is I want to do a little bit of research to go and validate that. So if any of your listeners as well have got, if they want to reach out, if they want to be part of that research and organizational assessment, then please do reach out. And I imagine it's probably going to be 2027.
Well, fantastic. We will be looking for it, Darren, and I will, of course, put your contact information in the show notes. So if somebody wants to contribute to the entire body of knowledge for all of the years to come, they can reach out to you. Darren, this has been a tremendous conversation. I have learned a lot. I think our audience will have learned a lot. Some really cool new perspectives we haven't had on the show before. Is there anything we haven't touched on yet that you would like to mention before we sign off today?
Oh, I just love this subject. So I could talk about it forever. No, I think we've touched on a lot there. So I'd like to thank you for inviting me.
I know you said the new book doesn't come out till 2027. That could be 12 months from now. That could be 23 months from now. If it's 23 months from now, we'd love to have you beforehand to kind of talk about the research as it's going. And once again, if you'd like to be a part of Darren's research and contribute to this incredible body of knowledge that makes everything around the world better for everybody, which is the whole point of this, making things better for people, reach out to Darren. And I'll include that information in the show notes. Darren Walsh, thank you so very much for joining us today. This has been fantastic. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Dan.
We'll be back in 2 weeks with another episode of Quality Time with MoreSteam. Thanks again.